Are the other committee members able to make it, or am I the only one?
So we've got you, we've got Polly today. Dwayne sent an email last night that he has a family obligation, so he's not going to be able to
Okay,
participate, but I feel like with the two of you, we have enough of a quorum that we can proceed.
okay. Oh, there's Polly.
Yeah.
Hi. Yeah.
Polly, do you have your video on?
Yes.
Okay, for some reason I can't see you, but
Was that right?
I think so.
I
So I'm
Yeah,
gonna,
I can't see her either. By the way, hi Dwayne, I'm Dana. I work
Hey,
with
Dana.
Laura. Hi,
welcome aboard.
thank you.
this is our most unusual way of meeting and introducing to new staff. So what we can do now, give me just 1 minute, I'm sorry. Got a little bit of an echo, just making sure my mic is off here. There we go. I think I'm okay still. Wait. All right, so I wanted to go quickly over our agenda. I'm having a little bit of feedback. Is anybody, are you able to understand me?
I think the echo might be coming from Polly's computer because it keeps lighting up.
Let me try one more thing here. I want to make sure it's not because of the broadcast. All right. How's that working?
That's better.
Better. Okay. So
Yes, it's better.
better.
I'm still hearing an echo, but I don't.
I'm hearing it also.
Yeah.
You try this. How does that work? Can you
Not
hear?
hearing it. Oh,
I'm hearing that.
I'm still hearing the echo.
Not a problem.
I think I should mute. Maybe that would help.
Sometimes if the volume is a little high, it can be a problem.
In the refrigerator.
I want to just quickly cover the agenda for today, which is and go over kind of our meeting, what we're planning to do, and then the meeting requirements. So I've shared my screen here with you, and you can see. I'll try this one more time here. So our meeting agenda for today is before you. And then what I would also like to share at this point is our, just read a brief statement about how we're doing this meeting. Give me just a second, I apologize. So just for the record, I'll go ahead and read this meeting notice. The Boone County Aging Tax Board Committee, pursuant to KRS 61.826 and OAG 20-05, will meet on Tuesday, April 28th, 2020 at 3 p.m. Eastern Standard Time via video teleconference. This meeting format has been necessitated due to the state of emergency regarding threats to public health presented by the novel coronavirus COVID-19 pandemic. The meeting may be attended by the public by viewing the video teleconference via YouTube at www.youtube.com/channel/UCG10FG8B MAX4MKJ The meeting agenda will be posted in advance of the meeting, and residents may submit a question or comment regarding any item to the Human Services Director, L. Plyman at BooneCountyKY.org, no later than Monday, April 27, 2020 at 12 noon Eastern. So we have, this is our plan for today. I wanted to go over, just to quickly go over a couple of things that we have covered in the past, talk about fiscal year 20 a little bit, where we're at, just so you can see how we've been working. I'll pull up the agenda here. And for your knowledge, I'm working off 2 different computers. So that's why I'm looking to my left so much. So as you notice, again, to let you know that we are broadcasting this on YouTube, so it is available for the community to view. I received no questions about our agenda from anybody. So I feel confident that we're able to move forward. I just want to talk to you a little bit about fiscal year 20 allocations and trends. Really everything for 20 has gone on pretty well up until March. We did have an issue. Once the COVID-19 issue materialized, we allowed some organizations. Let me see. One more person. Do we have another person joining? Polly, you don't have anybody else on joining, do you? Okay, I'll bring you in, just making sure that was you. Is that working for you?
I'm going to sign out of this one. I'm going to sign her off of this original computer and see if this other one works better.
Okay, great. Let me know if that one works for you.
Yeah.
That one doing okay?
No, we can't hear it.
Can you hear us now?
Can you all hear this computer?
We can,
I
yes.
can hear you.
Yes.
Please.
Yes, we can hear you.
We can hear you.
Get rid of the feedback.
I think it did, yes.
Okay, well, that is good to me.
That working good? Okay. So wanted to update you on what we've done with the ALEC organizations since the COVID emergency began. Really initially, when Boone County Schools announced their closure, we knew that this was going to be an impact to the organizations that receive tax funds, and soon realized aging organizations were to be right behind them. So in conjunction with Kenton and Campbell County, we have allowed organizations to do an alternate billing practice for the duration of this emergency during the current fiscal year. And organizations are allowed to, they submit a plan to us about how they are operating, which could be very broad, anything from continue to operate as normal to no longer operating at all. And on a regular basis, submit proof of payroll. Organizations could bill us at an average rate for their services. So really what they had billed basically July through February, and an average that out, they could bill that for the remainder of the fiscal year during this piece. We've probably had about a 50% I think 50% of the organizations, Dana might be able to get a better sense of that, who've taken advantage of this. As you can imagine, some of these organizations are safety net type programs, so they're going to be involved in all of this on a regular basis that maybe are having more business, like Faith Community Pharmacy, but other organizations like senior centers can't operate at all. And they have agreed to, they have asked to take advantage of this particular program. So we're happy with that. I think it's been received very positively. The organizations have appreciated the partnership. Truthfully, it was at the end of the fiscal year, so some organizations have already billed out or would be very close to billing out anyway. But we felt it was one way that we could support the community through this very unprecedented time. Wanted to also jump in. Everything sound okay? Just making sure everybody can hear still. Okay, good.
Good.
Great. So, and Dwayne can jump in a little bit too. I'll share a little bit about our capital projects here. Dwayne was our aging member who joined us for the pilot of the capital projects campaign. You'll recall that when we met last year, we discussed the opportunity to allow organizations to apply for funds as kind of piloting a program that they could use for capital expenses. And I'm not going to run through all of this, but I wanted to share a little bit about who came through and what that looked like. So we did have applications from 5 organizations. You're going to see this was our process here. The RFP was announced in July. We received 5 proposals. We had a member from each of our tax boards agree to participate to review them and make recommendations. So Dwayne was our volunteer from aging. And then we had 1 for mental health and 1 from intellectual disabilities. And the funds were available beginning July or January 1st. So the first organization to receive funds was Brighton Center for some repairs to their facility located at Shelby Street in Florence. Some of those repairs have already begun and have been completed. It's not completely finished yet, but you can see what those pieces are there. New Day Ranch received the funding of $117,500 to build a pole barn classroom on their property and a 15-passenger van purchase. I have been told that the 15-passenger van is not likely going to happen, so that money will remain unused. I guess after they went through the process, they realized the cost for insurance for transporting school children was going to exceed what they could participate in, so they won't be doing that. But the pole barn was supposed to start earlier this year. Community Action Commission asked for assistance for creating a smartphone app and a purchase again of a van. And this would be for the purpose of transporting individuals to jobs within our community, particularly taking those individuals who maybe aren't as well suited for taking a bus and then having to walk from where the bus stop ended to where the opening of the facility, which is often quite a distance. They could be a little bit more responsive to that. So it's adding to support to our transportation infrastructure. And then our aging application came in from Panorama Plus, and this location is kind of at the end of Florence into Union area. I think it's still in Florence, right? Right there, Dwayne, is that right?
That's correct. That's in the city.
Yeah. And so they are senior high-rise apartment living, low-income seniors, and they needed some repairs to their facility. This isn't a currently funded organization or program, but the tax board recommendation was to support them at a certain level, enough to replace some of their HVAC equipment and do some window replacement. So they were able to access that as well. So the total allocation was about $277,000. I forgot the last one, our Redwood School and Rehabilitation. They are expanding their facilities into Boone County, and they have secured a location at the old the Women's Crisis Center building. It's not an old building, it's a new building off of 237. I believe they are purchasing that facility and hoping to renovate that and hoping to start providing services as early as the updated timeline, I think, was August, but I'm guessing that's going to be pushed back a little bit, given the current situation that we're in, that may not be able to do that quite so soon. So those were the 5 organizations that received the funds. Our current recommendation for fiscal year 21, we're in the process of doing all our budgeting is why we're here today. We are going to put some funds into that account to do do this program again to get it off the ground. So we think that we'll support it probably around the same level. A maximum of 350,000 is what our plan is at this time. But we thought it was a good investment in our community and a good investment in these community service providers. So we're happy with that. Any questions about that? Yeah. Okay, great. Then looking at our, pulling up our, so I'll jump right into our capital funds recommendations here. I think both of you should be familiar with this form. This is the same form that we've used for the past several years. This is, I hope that don't make you dizzy. So here you'll find, as we've done in the past, our organizations that are requesting funds are over here on the left. These are the programs that are listed that they're asking for funding for. We have 2 new programs here, the medical transportation for both Helping Hands and MedCab. And then their fiscal year 21 request. This is our fiscal year 21 recommendation for the department, which will change based upon your input today. And then this is the current funding levels. We also have, I just lost my mouse because I'm looking at the wrong one. Over here, if we scroll down a little bit, we have also included in this what fiscal year 20 funding is from Campbell County and from Kenton County. I'm sorry, this is the funding from last year for fiscal year 20 and fiscal year 20 for Kenton. So we don't have their allocations listed quite yet for the next fiscal year. So what we usually do, if you're open to it, is let's go down the line and kind of share kind of our reasonings and our recommendations for these different numbers. Does that work for both you, Dwayne, and Polly?
That works great.
Okay, great. So the City of Florence Senior Center and City of Walton Senior Center, as we mentioned before, they're currently not operating during the pandemic. I do wonder if, I imagine that they'll be one of the last restrictions to be lifted due to the population that attend those programs. But the recommendation, and I think that I did say we'll go down the line, but it's helpful sometimes to consider like-minded programs. And we have RC Durr as the other program for the Senior Center at Boone County. We've traditionally kept City of Florence and RC Durr about the same level. They're nearly the same size of a program. And so we've kept that kind of funding level at that. City of Walton is a smaller program. You'll see if you look at their allocation for this current fiscal year is $16,000. However, their request was only at $13,520. We like even numbers, so kind of splitting the difference there brought it up to 14,000. So that would be a reduction, but based on their application, that's what their need is. This number is less than what their request is for both the City of Florence and RC Durr, it's 44,000. But it's still a good chunk of money. We haven't given them a cut of any kind. So I think that our recommendation is to keep that funding flat for both the City of Florence and RC Durr, and to give Walton what their request level was. Even though that's a reduction, it's still what the request was at. Any questions about them?
Laura, what was on the sheet? It doesn't list what one. Maybe I'm looking in the wrong spot. How much is, so they're requesting, how much? City of Walton?
City of Walton's requesting $13,520. If you're looking on your application there, it'll be the first line right here on that first page is a summary. If you go to the second page, which is the actual program, and it's hard to tell the cells if I can pull it up. I can pull it up for if you'd like to see it.
No, I got it. I found it. Okay,
Yeah,
I was looking in the wrong spot. Okay.
Yeah. So we've asked them, we took back, I'll say, after we met last year, all 3 of our tax boards had the same kind of comments for the organizations. And it was, we want to have better information about when you're completing these applications. This is not a lot of data to fill in as far as your descriptions. And they were getting much smaller, a lot more errors as far as grammatical and spelling checks. So we went back to them when we did a meeting before the applications were due and kind of stressed that need. That still didn't happen. So we spent a lot of time in January and February and March going back to these organizations and saying, you need to tell us more about what's going on here. We need to understand a little bit more about how these are operating, what's differentiating you from other programs. And so we've gotten some that are better. We have a way to go for a few of them though.
So we're gonna do YMCA, or RC DUR, 20,000.
That would be the recommendation.
Okay, keep it at 20, then Florence at 20 also.
Mhm.
Okay, I'm okay with that.
Me too.
Okay, that's great. And Walton at 14,000, does that work for the two of you also?
That's fine.
That's fine with
You know,
me.
it's interesting, now that you're requiring the compensation of the executives, and you look at a nonprofit YMCA and you look at the comp, and this is totally off the record, but I mean, look at the president and CEO. I mean, they're making $286,000 a year. That's crazy. I mean, that's absolutely crazy money. And especially if you look at, you know, people working cooperatively. I mean, you've got some high paid execs there.
You've hit
Which
you've hit a couple of my top ones there. The other one I would add in is Children's Home in Northern Kentucky.
Really?
Yeah,
Are they highly compensated also?
he's approaching $400,000.
What?
Wow.
Yeah,
What?
yeah. And the problem with it is one piece of what the IRS looks at when awarding a 501c3 is executive compensation. I mean, it's not the only piece of it, but that's a piece that they're able to review and say, is this out of line with the market and with what the work is, the size of the organization? And so I think that I personally think some of them are getting, I think Children's Home in particular is getting very close to that line where the IRS might say, this seems a little out of line with what the market needs for a nonprofit organization. If you're not going to pay taxes, this seems a bit maybe excessive.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's crazy. How many kids do they have down there? They don't have that many, do they?
Their residential program has wavered a little bit. It's depending upon, just like for any of the residential programs, it kind of depends on what the state's policy is going to be. And sometimes they lean a little bit more heavily into the group home setting. And sometimes they pull away and say that they want to try to get more into individual homes, which is the trend they're at now. They have expanded greatly their other services they provide, kind of like outpatient, in-school services and things like that. So he's done well diversifying that part of the programming, but it's still a challenge to accept that. It's a challenge to understand how you can invest taxpayer dollars when you have that kind of level of compensation.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So the one thing I will say with RC DUR, with the Y, that is the YMCA for all of Greater Cincinnati. It's not
Right.
just
Mm-hmm.
Burlington. It is a higher but yes, we do look at that. All right, we'll move on to community services then, if you don't have any other questions about that. Community services, as you'll remember, is they do adult daycare for both individuals who are aged, but also those who have intellectual disabilities or some kind of a physical disability that would prevent them from, being independently at home. It's not the same as like our intellectual disabilities groups that do work on site. It's more of an a day center. They do kind of respite activities. They're located on Spiral Drive in Florence, so they get a little bit more activity from Boone County than they do from Kenton and Campbell. And we recommend that funding stay flat. I didn't show you, I apologize, I should have shared this with you too just a minute ago. Our utilization rates. Yeah, let me pull this back over here. I'll pull up the utilization rates so you can see what those are. Dana configured these for us, so you can see what these organizations are doing. As a reminder, the City of Florence and the City of Walton and RC DUR are all about even billing. We do it 1/11th rather than 1/12th, so they get a flat bill every month for their services. So that 82% is just based upon 1/11th of the year that they would bill. You can see community services, adult daycare through March, they're at 77%. 3/4 of the way through the fiscal year, they're right on target to use those funds. So that's what their ask is. I think that's a comfortable, it makes sense to fund them at that continuing level. They've been a good program and they're a good resource in the community. This is, however, another one of those group settings with a particularly vulnerable population that I don't know how it's going to affect their operation beginning July 1 even. Any questions about them?
No, everything looks great.
Like that too. Okay. I'll pull this one back up again. We've had a next program up is Faith Community Pharmacy. They've been a great organization to work with. As you'll remember, they do prescription assistance. They don't charge anything for prescriptions. They do a lot of kind of chronic prescription assistance. So you think insulin for diabetes or heart disease kind of medications in particular, no narcotics or psychedelic kind of drugs at all. They had a new director who started in December, and we had lengthy conversations with him and with his board regarding the allocation and actually completing the application. I think to his credit, he was much more forthright with completing the application. I think that in the past, they were perhaps counting as part of their expenses donated medications, which is not how the application is set up to work. But they were really struggling with understanding how to attribute their funds, because for the way our application is set up is that if you have a significant portion of your business that is not in Boone, Kenton, or Campbell, where, so for instance, Grant, Gallatin, Pendleton, things like that, if those counties are not providing any funding assistance to you, then you're not going to be, it's set up so that this application configures out what your need is based upon how much you're serving in each county. We don't want to pay for anything above and beyond a Boone County resident, because that's not what this fund is for. So it also makes sure that you're taking any of those general dollars that are coming in and apportioning them correctly based upon your use within over the county. So if you have general dollars coming in, you can't say all those fundraising dollars are going to go cover the rural counties, and we're not going to use any of that for Boone, Kenton, and Campbell because we're getting fiscal court dollars. And it's just not the way this is set up. And so they struggled with that a little bit, but you'll see that's, I think, the reason for their reduction is that he was being very truthful and honest about how it was set up, even though he didn't like it. But it's reduced their request from the typical 80,000, I think is where we were at full-time last year, down to 57. And so this is kind of, again, evening it out, maybe being split, maybe a little bit less than it a little bit, but at 60,000. I will have to say, I think that they are probably experiencing a little bit more of an uptick in customer use during this current crisis, with more and more folks, finding themselves out of work. Even if they have insurance, sometimes covering those copays can be prohibitive. So they might be, we don't usually consider applying additional funds above and beyond what their application is. But when you consider that this application was completed in January based upon service levels they expected. Nobody expected COVID-19 in January to impact the economy the way it is. You might consider additional funds there. I pull up their utilization rates too. They are pretty well through it for this year, 88%. Not tremendously off, I mean, through February, but I guess it is through February, so they're at 88% there. Any questions about them?
So for 2021, they're requesting 50,812 total request, right?
57,812. Yep.
Okay, then we're funding mental health at 74. Okay, so they're asking a lot less than we did last year then, correct?
Yeah.
Okay.
And that's basically because it's because they're completing the application correctly, whereas last year they were not.
Okay, I gotcha.
Yeah.
Okay. That was
I'm sorry.
Only bad thing about a Zoom meeting is if you do get a phone call, it does come through.
Oh, that's annoying. Yeah.
Yeah, I know. Did you guys hear that at all or not? No,
You
you
froze
didn't.
up for a minute, but that was it.
Oh, okay.
How do you feel about that, Polly? Are you comfortable with that recommendation?
I am.
Okay. We'll move on then. Florence Lions Club is our next one here. Let me pull it back up. Let me share it with you all. So Florence Lions Club is our ongoing senior eyesight care program. You know, we don't. They are such a small program and really volunteer based, and we had more contact with them when Q Tybee was involved with them, but since he's fully retired and I think moved to Florida, he might be near you, Dwayne, I don't know. We haven't heard, we don't hear as much from them, but they tend to, so they haven't billed us anything yet for this program, but they usually do it at the end of the year. They always bill us after they bill every other possible provider for the eyeglasses. So they've been a good partner. I think it's been a good program within the county. And so our recommendation would be to continue at $6,000.
Have they ever used the whole 6,000?
They usually do, yes.
They do, okay.
But sometimes it's down to the wire. Sometimes we've had a couple of years where it was after the wire and we had to kind of, have a conversation about, we understand that you guys are a small group, but our fiscal year ends July 1. We give you to August 1. You can't be billing us in September for things that happened that past year. But for the most part, they have corrected that. Any questions about them?
No.
We can come back to any of these too. If we get back to go through them and you don't feel comfortable with any of them, please let me know. So Helping Hands is one of our, did you have something? Helping Hands is one of our 2 in-home providers, and this is another one we'll go down. So Helping Hands and Visiting Nurse Association do the in-home homemaking and then personal care services. They have both continued to perform very well. 2 very, Boone County companies, actually. The owner, both of them, I actually know, the owner for Helping Hands lives in Walton, and both of them are located, have their offices in Boone County. They do great work. We've slowly added some, remember we started funding Helping Hands a couple of years ago following Visiting Nurse Association's closure to offer some competition to Visiting Angels. I'll scroll down just as a reference. You can see that Visiting Angels has a much larger chunk of our business than what Helping Hands is. And it's just a capacity size, and really Helping Hands is newer to us than Visiting Angels. Helping Hands did get a slight mid-year increase for their homemaking program. Is homemaking correct? Yeah, to homemaking. I guess we're able to get some increases from for the fiscal year from I'm sorry, by contracting with Community Action Commission to do the case management. They started feeding some more folks over to Helping Hands. So it's gone well. We visited both with Helping Hands and Visiting Angels this fall, and the reports back for both of them, happy with how they're providing their services. So we recommend the funding at their request levels, which would be for fiscal year 21 at $20,000. This is close to their request level. The request was $21,150. This is probably better, closely monitors their utilization rate. And then for the personal care, the request is $4,323. Our recommendation is $5,000. And let me jump down to Visiting Angels, and then I will come back and talk about that medical transportation piece. Just for your comparison's sake, the Visiting Angels, the current funding is $130,000, and the for homemaking and personal care is for $35,000. You remember the differences between the two. Homemaking is things like cleaning the house. It could be picking up groceries for an individual. Things like that. Personal care are going to be things like bathing, shampooing, and are a little bit more personal. Sometimes you might have somebody who's a little bit more fragile who needs that personal care. Sometimes the homemaking is kind of the doorway. So that's why you see a bigger utilization of it, where people are welcomed folks to come in to help take care of their home than they would necessarily do the personal grooming kind of things. So the recommendation would be for Visiting Angels is higher currently. Still, they have a bigger portion of our business, and this should cover their utilization. 120 might be close, but we have continued to allow them to request a mid-year increase. If they expend 50% of their allocation through December 31st, they can request up to an additional 20% by the end of January for the current fiscal year. So we have a backstop there based upon that, but based upon their numbers, it looks like the 120 should work. Do those make sense?
Looks good.
Yeah.
Excuse me. Thank you. So jumping back to Helping Hands with the medical transportation, we talked about this a lot, like how this works. We funded it in the past. It didn't really go too great for a couple of reasons. I have my suspicions. It was managed through the ad, and it was contracted with Senior Services, and we know that Senior Services is defunct, so it's possibly a combination of those things. And limited funding. We didn't have a whole lot of funding available for that, so it just a program that didn't really work well. This past year, the ad lost one of their providers for medical transportation. And in a pinch, the owner of Helping Hands, like I said, he's a Boone County resident. He actually sits on the Council on Aging board at the ad. He's really involved. He offered on a very basis, on a very limited capacity, to coordinate medical transportation for case managed clients with, Lyft. So if a senior needs an appointment, has an appointment that they need covered, they can call into their case managers and they will schedule an appointment. And the way the ad was doing it was a reimbursement on a flat rate, regardless of how far they were going. So if it was a shorter rate, Helping Hands made out. If it was a larger rate, a longer trip, they might have been losing a little bit. But Helping Hands was the middleman in coordinating those things. So we said we were interested in this, and we encouraged them to apply. And he did. He applied to all 3 counties, but at a very, very limited basis, $1,800. So my sense is from Kenton and Campbell that they're going to try this. I was a little disappointed the program was so small at $1,800. We could certainly pursue it and try it. I think perhaps it might fit better eventually under the case management division rather than under a personal care or homemaking piece. But you can see we haven't put a recommendation here because just wanted to get some sense from you all what you thought about this. This $1,800 is a very small amount for any kind of program that we usually deal with. That $5,000 seems to be kind of our minimum number sometimes. Any thoughts about Helping Hands, their medical transportation?
Or do you feel like this is something you want to give it a try? I mean, we talked about doing Lyft and Uber and different types of programs. Do you want to, I mean, are you recommending we try 1,800 and see what happens?
You know, sometimes when things are so small, you got to wonder, is it going to be worth the headache of going through it? But, but also sometimes starting small is better to grow. The advantage is that we're funding them for other programs. So if this for some reason isn't working out, we can just not do it again. And we're still funding them for other things. So it's not like we're setting everything up just for one organization to get $1,800. I could see doing it. I think it's probably worth a try, see how it goes. And if it works and it helps a couple of seniors this year, that's great. But if not, then we'll re-examine it next year.
Most of your Lyft costs are anywhere between $20 and $30. And that'll give somebody 90 rides back and forth from doctor, hospital, whatever it might be. I think it'd be a good recommendation. Just let's do a trial run on it and see what happens.
Yep.
That would be great. Let me pull up their application real quick because I think for some reason didn't print the transportation piece. So yeah, they're charging $25. It'll be a $25 rate for anything within a 10-mile radius of the person's home. So happy to start that. I might bump them to, instead of, again, we kind of like to track with even numbers. So using perhaps the 2,000 rather than 1,800, would you all be comfortable with that?
I'm fine.
Yep.
Okay, great. All right, moving right along. Our legal assistants, our legal aid, legal assistants, this is a lot of the, we got to monitor them this year, actually just a couple months ago. Dana, it's one of Dana's first few monitorings, I think, wasn't it, Dana?
Yeah, it sure was.
Yeah. So you'll remember that they provide the service for all 8 counties in the ad region. They do a lot of education around Medicaid and Medicare, Medicare in particular for seniors, but they also work with them in setting up wills and living wills and wills. They'll work with seniors who are in a nursing facility, a senior home facility, who sometimes maybe their Medicaid has lapsed and the nursing home is ready to kick them out. They can intervene and get that reconnected again for those individuals if they're not removed from their home. It's been a good service, a good program. So we recommend continuing the funding. The request was for $17,350. Again, just for the ease of the funding levels, we recommend $17,000, which is where they're currently funded at.
Laura, that's great. We've had good luck with them
Yes.
and
Done it for
they
a
do
long
great
time.
work.
Great, thank you. Okay. Moving right along. Okay. I first had a conversation with the folks at MedCab, I want to say July of last year. And they were looking, I think, originally for some funds and weren't quite clear about what they were doing. They currently operate, they've been operating. I cannot tell you, I think that I tried to do the calculation that between myself and Alan Reinecke, who is my counterpart in Campbell County, probably has spent 3 to 4 hours talking with them, trying to work with them through this application process. And we're still not happy with the product that they presented. It's been a real challenge to, one, really understand what their program is, what their program revenues are, and what the costs are. I think that they are probably very kind-hearted people who want to provide a service, but they have a very business-oriented mode, and they're not really familiar with working through applying for grants, understanding how our application works. But we have tried repeatedly with them, and it's just never made any progress. So what you have before you is, I think, their best that they're going to be able to put forth. And it is our recommendation that we do not fund them at this time. I don't think we have a clear enough picture of exactly what the program is and exactly what their costs are. To be fair, he would constantly use the phrase of national averages for costs of a trip. But that's not really how we work. We work on what your actual costs are and what that gap is, so we can fill in that gap for you. He is operating the program currently, but he refers to it as a new program in the application. So there's not really an estimate there. The cost for the trips would be, he wanted $58,000. I'm sorry, let me do some quick math here. His costs for the trips were somewhere around $50 a trip, and ramps average is somewhere around 35. It was excessive what we usually by comparison. So at this time, our recommendation is not to fund that program. So his rate for one client for a one-way trip, you have the application in front of you. He wants to charge a $5 copay. He doesn't include any information about a copay in his transportations on his application for his income. So it's just not clear. They're asking, Medicare is asking for industry standard plus mileage reimbursement for aforementioned rider patient to increase transportation to allow for increase in transportation for customers. It's just not clear to me how this would work, and there's no accounting for any other funding they're getting in for this program.
Or I agree, we can table this or not fund it for this year. As I look through their history, I would like to know more information. Tank provides this service, and they provide the service, I think, free of cost to somebody that's in a wheelchair if they need to, I don't know what transportation services that they might need, but this to me seems like a duplication of service.
Mhm.
I can tell you that there is a need for it in the community. There is a need for additional transportation. Tank does offer a lot of a similar service. It's restrictive as far as who's able to use it. There's a small charge for some of it, up to a $3.50 charge for one way. And I can share with you eventually. I can share. We have further information about what there are. There are additional needs. Because even with the tank ridership, and as they really examined what that plot would be, as they recommend, I'm sure Dwayne, you saw some of this maybe as it came through with Andy Aiello, and if they're restricting their routes, they're only required to go within a certain mileage distance of the routes that they're there. So if you think about somebody in Southern Walton who isn't on that near that route, there is a need for some services like this. This is not the program for us. I would not, this is, in our opinion, our recommendation, this is not the program for us right now. We tried so hard to get them to work through it.
Well, it doesn't sound like the organization has a clear vision either. No, okay.
No.
All right, we can wait on that one.
And it's not that, I mean, really, when you, because transportation's been on our radar for a long time as a need. And so when we finally saw one, like I said, I was disappointed with Helping Hands was so small because we know that it's a need. But when we saw this one and we tried to work through it with them, it just was impossible. And I can tell you Campbell County feels the same way. And I think Kenton's the same, but I can't speak exactly for Kenton, but Campbell County is still there. And we can certainly come back to it if you'd like, but pulling back up our form here, just moving along a little bit. We're making good time, but we do have to be finished by 5 o'clock because they're going to use this Zoom meeting for our fiscal court tonight. So the next program, the next organization is Community Action Commission. And I remember that Community Action Commission, we looked to them 2-3 years ago to begin providing our case management assessment services. We pulled them away from the ad. We've been happy with the services they've been able to provide. They occasionally they had some turnover this year with their case manager, but they worked through it and were able to continue to provide the services. This isn't their full-time gig, but they're still doing a good job of it. I think it's a cost savings for us, for the county. I can tell you that I think that based upon what we're paying for this service, and then when I see what the ad is using our state and federal dollars for, I think we've achieved more case management and more services for our Boone County residents by pulling this to Community Action Commission. The other two programs that they have here are their emergency assistance program. You'll remember this was a long time ago. It was called Senior Plus. That was managed. You may not, I don't think either of you were involved this time. This is before I started. It was managed within the Human Services Office, but we outsourced this to Community Action Commission to do direct emergency assistance, which is direct cash assistance for cutoffs or rent or mortgage payments for an individual who is facing eviction or a foreclosure. And then the final program is a senior home repair. We've tried this program a couple of times. It just doesn't seem to work well with Boone County. I don't know if the staffing internally just doesn't have the consistency or the need, or they're not finding the right programs, but it's rarely used well. So our current recommendation for Community Action Commission, you'll see that the funding levels are here, is to fund at $22,000 for the assessment, $38,000 for the case management, to 28,000 for emergency assistance, and then no funding for the senior home repair. And let me pull up real quick their utilization, just so you can see that too. So this is CACs, their emergency assistance. They were a little low on that, the aging piece there. They did transfer that over to their, they're also funded through our mental health fund for the senior or for the emergency assistance. And so they transferred some of those funds to that, which is basically anybody up to age 60. And then their case management and their assessment programs are a little bit low, but not much. Like I mentioned before, they were low on, they were without a case manager for a while, so they didn't do quite as many assessments, but it did mostly phone calls for some of the case management piece. I'm sorry, the assessment was there, yeah, the case management. I will also say the emergency assistance, I think there was a little bit of a glitch at the beginning of the year. I had heard from our local Boone County Neighborhood Association, Neighborhood Center for CAC, that they didn't have access to those funds right away. They had a couple of folks calling in. So I think it took them, they were a little bit delayed getting that out, maybe August or September. I don't think it went out in July. Any questions about them?
Or we've talked about senior repairs. I know we have people working cooperatively. Do we have anybody in Northern Kentucky that's doing senior repairs?
I mean, CAC is in Northern Kentucky. It doesn't, for some reason, it doesn't seem to work well in Boone County. PWC, that's a good point. It's the same program. They've had maybe a little bit of turnover too. We had a glitch. We haven't really received much billing from them. I think that they always tend to come through and bill by the end. I think that PWC likes to just use our I think we've come to an agreement almost with PWC where they use our $5,000 as leverage to say that they're funded by Boone County and they can pull in other funds to provide services. So they're doing more work in Boone County than just what this 5,000 is showing. But it's not, but we're pulling that small portion in. And as far as anybody else besides those two, not that I'm aware of.
Okay.
Occasionally you might have a veterans group that will do it, but not that I know of. And we did make one of the caveats for the pilot for the capital funds was that you could use it for home repairs for, you know, seniors, veterans, or low-income families, but nobody took advantage of that. Any questions about CAC?
Looks good.
Yeah, comfortable with that? All right, we'll jump down then to PWC. We covered it already. Our recommendation is to keep it kind of flat there. It's a relatively small amount compared to some of other programming. And I think we do get our money's worth with it. But again, for some of the reasons that you mentioned, Wayne, earlier with executive compensation, we've had some history with working with them in the past that we didn't, this is years ago, but didn't particularly like all that process and found some errors with it. And so the recommendation is just to keep it flat at this point.
Do they just not come over on this side of the river?
Oh, no, they do.
They do, okay. I know they're up there on Paddock Road and kind of the middle of Cincinnati, and I know last year they made a big push at the Chamber of Commerce last year, and that Jock Pitts made a big presentation, and I just don't see him around.
Let me see if I can find out. Yes, I do believe that they come in. I think this is just a small portion of what they do. I was going to see if I don't, since I'm not in the office, I don't have the annual report, but I can look into it more for you and I'll get that back to you.
One organization I see quite a bit is Habitat for Humanity, and they do a lot of work in Northern Kentucky. So I don't know if we reach out to them. They do a lot with our veterans. They've got, I think, 2 or 3 shops in Northern Kentucky now where they sell used furnishings and building material, and all of that goes to building new homes, that type of thing. So I don't know if we can reach out to them and see if that's an organization that might be able to do senior repairs.
Yeah, we can look into it. The other one that I mean, and I know what my knowledge of Who did you just say, Dwayne? I'm so sorry.
Habitat for Humanity.
I wrote helping, so then I was helping hands was in my head.
Oh, that's all good.
So after, other than, I know Habitat does a lot of full builds, and there's also Honk, which is housing opportunities in Northern Kentucky, does kind of full builds. But we can look into that also. And I should explain, Dana, and I shared this a little bit, Dana comes to us most recently at Welcome House in Northern Kentucky, which does a lot of homeless service provision. And then prior to that, she worked at an agency in Cincinnati Behavioral Health. So Dana's got a lot of experience in the human services field in Northern Kentucky and in Cincinnati. So if you know of anything else, Dana, you're welcome to share that too, please.
Dana, who were you with over in Cincinnati?
I was with Greater Cincinnati Behavioral Health.
Behavior health. Okay.
But it's funny you mentioned Habitat for Humanity, because I was looking them up as we were talking about home repairs, thinking, do they do anything like that? So you were reading my mind there.
Oh, I could feel that. Could you feel my X-ray karma
Yep.
coming through there?
Yep, I think so.
Dana's been great. She's been able to almost foresee what we're doing at these meetings. It's just our second meeting of doing this, and she's been really helpful in foreseeing what we're doing. So, okay, so let me pull up our form then again. We already discussed RC DUR. The other program is RT Transportation. You'll remember this is our senior center transportation program that's provided through a cab company. We've not had a lot of participation in that program, and in fact, it dwindled so much over the last fiscal year that you'll remember we ended the program for Walton, and so the current transportation is only to the Boone County Center for actually 3 ladies, I think twice a week, get the service. It's been one of those things. After Senior Services in Northern Kentucky closed, they were the ones who were operating with the City of Florence and the City of Walton's senior centers. And when those went back out to bid, you know that RC DUR applied and was chosen to operate those centers. So it's nice in a lot of ways is that we have this one agency that's kind of able to report back on all the work of the 3 senior centers that we have in Boone County. So that's a really nice piece. And so once we saw that the utilization drop in the City of Walton, I was able to reach out to RC DUR and say, all right, do you need more transportation at Florence? Do you need any particular Florence? Do you need more transportation at the Y? And they looked at it and said, we've asked around. Nobody at Florence really says they want a cab ride to get here. They're okay. And everybody at, so we have a few ladies at the city or at RC DUR that still want it. So nobody at Walton wanted it. They were being very honest and saying, and we feel like this one woman who uses it sometimes is kind of taking advantage of it. So we ended that program at Walton, but they're keeping an eye out for us with it and letting us know. Again, this is another one that depending on how senior centers happen in the fall, it could impact the business, but our recommendation is at 12,000. They have 18,000 in their application. That was something that was what we help them complete working through it. They're a small business, so they aren't necessarily as familiar with our programming. But if you look at, I was going to share it with you. If you look at their utilization rates here for RT Transportation, they're only at 35% of it, of the 18,000, which is what they're allocated this year through March. So that 12,000 is going to really be more than enough to get them through this year. Thoughts or questions about it?
Wow,
We've discussed this every year, and
you did.
go ahead, Polly.
Well, I was just thinking about that with the RC DUR. Let's see here. The okay, I was down here to the senior center transportation. Okay, I just wanted to get it right there. Okay, all right, that's all right. Go ahead.
No, I'm okay with it.
Sound okay, Polly, then?
Yeah, that's fine.
Okay.
Mhm.
Well, we already touched on Visiting Angel a little bit and their current rates, and we've discussed that a little bit, so I won't discuss that any further unless you have any questions about it. Okay, so our last organization is Wesley Community Services, which may have changed their names. I just found out yesterday to something with Meals on Wheels. It's the same program that they've had for a long time. They got a new executive director this year, and she's actually spent a lot of time on the Northern Kentucky side of the river in different roles. And so I think that's an advantage to us. Do you know who she is?
Oh, I can't. When did Jennifer take over that position?
Yeah, Jennifer. She, July maybe?
Of last year, really?
Yeah,
Okay.
it's probably been close to a year. And I have to say, you know, I always liked Steve Smukler, who was the first director there when we first took on the program. And actually, he just passed a month or so ago. But Jennifer being in this seat at this time has been fantastic. She reached out to us in early March and said, you know, we're keeping an eye on this COVID thing. We want to make sure that, you know, we're doing some pre-planning. We don't want anything as far as, you know, disruptions to supplies or to our personnel to affect getting meals to seniors. So in advance, they purchased and prepared shelf-stable meals, 14 meals. So everybody at the beginning of this, in addition to their regular frozen meals, received 14 shelf-stable meals in case that disruption happened. They are expanding their programming. They've partnered with BAWAC, who is one of our intellectual disabilities organizations, because a lot of the meal providers that they use, that their staff are of that vulnerable population, that age of that population. They asked if BAWAC, who is no longer providing transportation for those intellectual disability services, to transport some of their meals. And so they've been doing that too. So they've been a fantastic organization to continue to work with us on this. We've been really happy with their work. We're recommending a full funding for that service. Their utilization is down. It's not quite as high as that. So we have some capacity if we have, if the case management at the CAC can handle it, they could do some help, but you'll see that utilization is down there. But again, not sure what's going to happen with the COVID. If this continues on, is there a need for additional shelf-stable meals? Is there a need to expanding this? It's there. The nice part about our funding is that if the organization doesn't use it, it stays with the county. It doesn't go to their pocket and it just isn't used. It stays with the county. So that's our recommendation for Wesley.
Mhm. I really like that. Mhm.
Thank you. They've been a great partner. I can't say enough about that particular piece of it, and they're leading the conversations about what the meal insecurity is and offering their services to transport other supplies to seniors during this time. So, I was on a call yesterday about senior services during COVID-19 and what needs to happen, and they're at the forefront of offering both ideas and solutions to potential problems that have come through. So it's refreshing to have that leadership.
Or if a senior wants to apply, how do they apply for Meals on Wheels?
There are two ways. So they can either go to Community Action Commission, call them, and apply that way, and that's really where our funding would come through. Or
Through
they,
CAC, okay.
yes, CAC, or they could go to the ad, because the ad has federal and state dollars for the same kind of a program.
Okay,
And if they called Wesley would refer them to one of those two places too.
okay.
Yeah. Does that 120 and 36,000 sound okay right there?
Guys, it sounds great.
So if you sit with this, you'll see down here that our allocation for fiscal year 20 is 627,000, and this year it's down a little at 581. A lot of this is basically because they're reduced requests. We're still requesting at their, we're funding at their maximum request, but that's still, for instance, like here in Visiting Angels, that's 10,000 less than this current year. Faith Community Pharmacy is another big one. So you've got a couple of those where we've gone back and forth. So I'm comfortable with this number. I think it's a good representation, even though the total request here is somewhere around 705,000 at 581,000. We're meeting a large proportion of this request, and I think that's a good program.
Laura, with tax revenue down this year, do you see the fiscal court coming back and requesting a reduction?
Yeah, we've been really lucky in Boone County, and we've had some really good payroll reserves building up. And I say
Okay.
lucky in that for this particular instance, we've worked really hard to make sure we don't have that reserve. That's why we did the capital funding. I think that if we were to cut anything first, we would cut that program before we cut the programmatic funds. But because of our reserve, I don't anticipate that we'll have that issue. Even this is a payroll tax. I don't think we're going to have a cut this year. Campbell County, I can tell you, is preparing an 80%. They're preparing their normal recommendations based upon what their projections were, but they're also preparing an 80% budget based upon that. Because they don't know how this is really going to impact it. I don't think that we'll be asking them to do any cuts. I think that because we have that reserve and because of what these kind of programs are acting as a safety net, that we're probably going to have a lot of support from the fiscal court to continue to offer these programs at your recommendation levels.
Okay.
This is all the really fun stuff that we get to do. We haven't had to make any cuts in years, and that's it's been great, but I think we've been really good stewards of, with your help and guidance, of the taxpayer dollars that we're allocating funds at a reasonable level based upon what demonstrated need from these organizations and what the community need is. So we always really appreciate your feedback with any of this. Next steps, we're scheduled to go take these recommendations to the fiscal court on June 9th. Whether that's in person or virtually, I guess will be left to be seen. And then we anticipate these funds will be available July 1st. We also anticipate currently having the capital fund application available in sometime late summer, again, with the process that we would have probably pull together another volunteer from each of them. And so we'll probably tag into you, Polly, or to Rick to see if they'd be able to do it, since we've used Dwayne already for one of these, and get some input into how those might look. So any other questions? Anything else I could add for you?
Looks great, Laura. Keep up the
Thank
good
you.
work.
Yeah. Yes.
Thank you. This is the stuff we love to do, and we're excited to do it. I think that Boone County is still regarded as a leader within our community and for in this aspect, and we're happy to be part of it. So thank you for all your work here, and I hope you have a good rest of your spring and stay healthy, and tell your families we said hello.
Will do.
Yeah.
Thanks, Laura.
All right.
Thank
Thank
you.
you. Bye.
Nice to meet you guys.